When I was a child, I decided I really wanted to do two things in life: play the piano and find life on Mars. Many people told me, of course, I had to choose only one, but I didn't listen to them. Music and space exploration are the heart and soul of my life. And I now can say that I am a pianist, and also I am searching for life on Mars. When I was 4 years old, my grandfather used to wake me up early in the morning to see the sunrise. We would spend hours lying in the hammock of our terrace, and he would tell me stories about the universe. He told me that there were many planets in outer space, and that maybe some of them had green aliens living on them. He died when I was still very young, so these memories are the only ones I have with him. This is not a field for the timid or the hesitant. I am not the only child to have dreamt about green aliens and going to space, but I am one of the few girls who turn those dreams into reality. I have dedicated my entire life to those dreams, overcoming obstacles and finding ways to do things that people told me was impossible and out of my reach. I've been told many times that I look more like a hairstylist rather than a scientist. I wish it was true because my hair is very curly. In my first year of university, out of 120 students, only 10 of us were women. And it was quite common for us girls to be asked if we were in the right place. Despite not knowing a word of English, I left my home and my family in Spain to study abroad in Sweden, Germany, London, and now Hong Kong. I don't need to tell you that astrophysics and astrobiology was hard to learn. It's literally rocket science. But I never gave up. And despite the challenges with the studies and the language, I finally did it. And I have published articles. I've written a book with other colleagues about astrobiology. And I am recognized in media and academia as an expert in this field. But many people ask me, why is this important? Why is planetary exploration important in our daily lives? One of the reasons is because planetary exploration encourages us as humans to look deep into our inner selves as nothing else can. To understand whether we, here on Earth, our solar system, and maybe even far beyond, are the only ones alive. It also satisfies a fundamental desire to know more about our surroundings. Some of the greatest achievements of humankind were only because we explored. Think how excited we're going to be when we land on Mars. Perhaps then we will look back at Earth as we struggle to survive on Mars and appreciate how beautiful planet Earth is. Aside from this, every person on Earth benefits now from planetary exploration. For example, weather satellites inform us about the effects of climate change, or when the next typhoon is coming. When you pay for your morning coffee by bank card, a satellite instantly confirms the transaction. Your camera phones, your wireless headsets, or even air purifiers are some technologies initially developed by NASA for the Apollo missions or the International Space Station. But despite this and many other technological developments, understanding if there is life on Mars is still a challenge. Early Mars, about 4 billion years ago, was very similar to Earth. Had plenty of liquid water, rivers, lakes, even an ocean that covered most of the northern hemisphere. And why is water important? Because it's one of the main ingredients for life. Today, Mars is very different. is inhospitable, very cold, very dry. There is no liquid water on the surface, only ice on the poles. But where did the water go? Was there life on Mars when there was liquid water on the surface? Here on Earth, anywhere, and I mean anywhere, we find water, in any form and in any temperature, we find life. Until we humans can go to Mars, we try to solve these questions by using comparisons with sites on Earth that are very similar to Mars, what we refer to as terrestrial analogs. These are sites on Earth that were created in almost identical conditions, or that can simulate similar processes as what we can see on Mars. The desert in the Pilbara, Australia, where I went to study the origin of life on Earth. The hot springs of Rotorua, New Zealand, to study the possibility of life emerging in hot environments on Mars. Lake Siso in Spain, to study organisms that don't use oxygen for photosynthesis, to study organisms that could survive on Mars today. I'm currently studying what I believe to be one of the best representations of Mars on Earth, the Chaidan Basin in the mountains north of Tibet, one of the most extreme environments on Earth. Millions of years ago, this place was a giant lake, but because of the Himalayas pushing, it raised the surface very high. All the water disappeared, and now it's very cold and very dry. This is the highest desert on Earth. There is no people living there. There is no vegetation. Not even insects live there. So I go there with my team to study this place, to collect samples, and analyze them in a laboratory to see the similarities with Mars. We found organisms that survive with almost no water, or other organisms that survive at really high radiation levels. And all of this gives us clues about the survival strategies of these organisms and whether we could find the same type of life on Mars, even today. But these expeditions are not easy. This place is very remote. The closest city is 2 days drive away. I am always the only woman, and I always feel very sick because of the high altitude. But when we are there, it's so exciting because we do real science in an environment that is very similar to Mars, but rare on Earth. The only problem when we're there is that there they mainly eat yak, this fluffy, cute animal. So when we are there, we had to eat a lot of yak milk, yak yogurt, fried yak meat, boiled yak meat, yak meatballs, yak butter, yaki. In these mountains of north of Tibet, I found dozens of similarities with Mars. And I could talk about this for hours, but I was only given 18 minutes, so I'm going to only show you 3. Polygonal soils form because of periods of intense evaporation and dryness. The shape of the alluvial fans indicate that a lot of water melted in the past, forming these very long and deep valleys. If you look at the 2 bottom pictures, even that little rock on the right is on the same place. Yardangs are these little teardrop-shaped hills formed because of strong winds. The Chaidan Basin has the largest and highest Yardangs field on Earth. And this is important because Yardangs are abundant on Mars. Again, look at the 2 bottom pictures. On Mars, it was taken by the Curiosity rover, and I took the one on the Chaidan Basin from the car. Thanks to this research, I was able to take part in what has been so far the proudest moment of my career. I was part of the landing site selection team for the next NASA mission that is going to Mars next year. Thank you. The mission is called Mars 2020, obviously, and it's going to determine whether there is life on Mars or there was life on Mars in the past. This is going to be the first mission ever to bring samples back from Mars to Earth. So when I was researching the possibility of a landing site for Mars 2020, I had to find a site that gave the rover the best chance of finding samples that could indicate something about the possibility of life. To do this, I used the terrestrial analog of the Chaidan Basin in the mountains north of Tibet to help me choose. The site I chose is in a location called the Holden Crater, near the equator of Mars. The landing site itself is not too big, it's about 20 kilometers long, because the rovers on Mars travel very slow. So I studied the geology of Holden Crater and prepared a path, that you have it marked in blue in the picture, for the rover to explore for life. Holden Crater was amongst the top 10 landing sites considered by NASA. And even though it was not the final landing site selected, it made me feel that I was part of something really big and important for the future of the exploration of Mars. So we are going to Mars, and I wish my grandfather was alive to see how much we have accomplished in this field. My personal feeling is that the shock of finding aliens will rock our world to its core. I believe we will see a new Earth arising from the afterglow, one that may become a much better place to live. We don't know what type of life we're going to find on Mars or where we will find it, but for sure it will be a turning point in the history of humankind. By trying to study life on Mars, we can also gain knowledge about the origin of life on Earth, as the question whether life on Mars and Earth is related is still confusing. We know by meteorites that have landed on Earth that rocks can be exchanged between the two planets. So if we find life on Mars, and I totally expect that we will find it, is this a second genesis of life? Did life start on Earth and was transported to Mars? Or did life start on Mars and was transported to Earth? Are we all Martians living on Earth? This is a fascinating mystery that we are going to unfold in the next decades. We're going to see plenty of action in space exploration, with the hope that we will keep pushing the limits to our human ability. Mars has indeed a beautiful alien quality, but in many ways is very similar to Earth. Mars is relatively close to us that can be visited by us with the aid of our spacecraft and rovers. One can even imagine living there. Children that are now in elementary school will be able to choose whether they want to live there or not. And this is not science fiction. Whether or not Mars has the right conditions for living in today, the chances are that perhaps one day it will. Should we choose to live there or not? We don't know yet. But what is certain is that if we ever choose to live beyond Earth, Mars is surely the place. Not even the Moon or any other planet in the solar system can compete with the fact that Mars is a world with water. Much colder than Earth, but with water. And that is what makes Mars so special. Now is the best time to be a Mars explorer. Because what was science fiction decades ago is now our reality. I feel that now, more than ever, the question whether there is life on Mars is deep within us. Are we alone? If you say that you have never asked yourself this question, I simply don't believe you. I talked a lot about Mars today, but you may remember that my other passion is music. I want to leave you today with a piece of music I arranged for the exploration of Mars. And I hope when you listen to the music I play, you will feel inspired to imagine the things that nobody has ever imagined and to go where no one has ever gone before. Thank you. Thank you.